All right, so today then we're talking about collections of objects. Going back to the first day of class, we said objects are going to be central to what we're doing in this course. The language is called an object-oriented language or an object-based language. We're going to use objects. Objects have two characteristics that we're going to live and breathe. What are they? Properties and methods. Properties and methods. Property is a value that describes what the object is. A method is something the object knows how to do. And so it's behavior as well as states. How is it and what can it do? We are going to talk today about, in detail, about a particular class of object, a particular kind of object called a collection. So collections are objects. So a collection has properties and methods. Tell me information about how the object is, and how the collection is, and let me do things with the collection. So collections are objects. But they're objects that hold references to other objects. For example, how many sheets do I have in this workbook right now? 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I've got 5 sheets. These are 5 individual objects, but built into Excel there's also a Worksheets collection. And that collection is going to allow me to manipulate these 5 sheets in a nice way. I don't have to refer to these 5 sheets individually. What I could do is I could say, oh, there's a collection. I could write some code that deals with the elements of this collection. And what are the 5 elements of the Worksheets collection? There are these 5 worksheets. And so it lets us write code that we can say, oh, we want to treat all of these things the same way, write a little bit of code and just have it do all of them, however many there are. We might have code that says, you know what I want to do? I want to turn the first row green of every worksheet in this workbook. I don't know what they're called. I don't care what they're called. I don't care how many there are. I want them all. And so I don't know what they're named. How am I going to get to them? And the answer is with a collection. A collection that will help me do that. And so that's what we're going to take a look at today. So, let me add a couple of charts here. So here on table 5, let's see, A, B, 1, 2. That's a wonderful chart. That would be a great chart. Let me make a chart here. Insert, column chart. A wonderful chart. And now I'm going to put this chart on its own sheet. So move chart. You can do this if you want to. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with the charts here, but it'll be interesting for you to see it. You may or may not want to actually do what I just did. Can I make a pie chart on that? Insert pie chart. There we go, a pie chart. And move chart to the sheet. All right, so I've got a couple of charts. I've got 5 worksheets, and I'm going to go to my code. Let me go ahead and view the normal things we've got showing here. So that would be the Project Explorer and the Properties window. I got book 2 and book 1. I got 2 books. I don't want 2 books. I need 2 books. I want to have only one book. I don't care what it's called, but I want to have only one book open. So here's book 1. I got various sheets here. Okay. So now I want to get to the code. I want to put some code in this workbook. What do I do to be able to put code in this workbook? Insert what? Insert a module. So I'm seeing some code here. That's from some other add-in that I've got. I think it's from like the data analysis toolkit or something. So I'm going to insert. I'm going to make sure that I've got my project selected here, and then insert module. That'll give me a module to work with. I'll make sure that that module is inside my workbook that I'm working on. Here it is, part of book 2. That's good. All right. Here's the immediate window. Got a sub procedure here. All right. So sub, I'll call this sheet collection. So the first thing is that let's see what we have to do to just refer to the collection itself. So here we go. Debug.print. And then there's a collection called Worksheets. Worksheets. Chinese version. Worksheets. So that's the name of the collection. So if I hit a dot here, it should give me the properties that pertain to, properties and methods that pertain to worksheets. No, that pertain to a collection of worksheets. Are they going to be different properties and methods for the collection of worksheets than for the worksheets themselves? Yes. They're different objects. And so I've got a collection here called count. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and kind of print some text to go along with this. I'm going to print number of worksheets. And so I'm just putting the count property of the worksheets class, the worksheets collection. I told them there's 5. Is that right? 5 worksheets? Yeah, worksheets 1 through 5. Well, there's also a number of charts. Now, this isn't the number of charts in the workbook. This is the number of chart sheets. If I have a chart that's just sitting on a worksheet, it's not in this collection. These are only the chart sheets. So we should call it chart sheets. Number of chart sheets. Now it's a different collection. It turns out the property is the same. Chart sheets is it's just called charts. So I've got 2 chart sheets. I've got 5 worksheets. All collections have a count property. They're all different objects. There's no reason they all have to have a count property, but they do. If somebody made a rule in Microsoft said, so you make a collection, you've got to give it a count property. I mean, someone could have written another collection kind of thing, and instead of saying .count, they could have said .length to tell you how many objects are in it. But in VBA, you can count on it having a count property. Right. Let's look at referring to individual items in those collections. Okay, so here's the name of the first sheet. So instead of referring to the count of the collection, I'm going to do something different. In parentheses, right here, I'm going to put a number. Now, I got 5 sheets. Their numbers are 1 through 5. The first one, I can now refer to a... Now here's kind of another magical thing. I hit a dot here. I wish I actually got to see the list. But now, this is a reference to what kind of object? What I have highlighted right now, the part I have highlighted is a collection. What I have highlighted here is what? It's a worksheet. This is a reference to a worksheet. And so do I have a .count property over here? Worksheets don't have a count property. So the worksheets collection has a count property. How about a name? Does a worksheet collection have a name property? No, but a worksheet has a name property. And so now, so by putting here in parentheses and saying the index number of the one I'm interested in, all of a sudden, I'm not looking at the collection, I'm looking at an element in that collection. And so the name of the first sheet is sheet 1. You might think that's pretty boring since it says sheet 1, but it's not that it was the first sheet created, it is the first sheet in the list. I'm going to move sheet 1 way over here to the end. I'm going to run that same code again. Now sheet 2 is the first sheet. Because the position in the collection is for worksheets is determined by the order of the tabs. You get to the charts the same way too. Charts number 1, chart number 2, refer to those chart sheets. Questions here? Yes?
How is the chart determined? Is it only if you create just a chart and put it into its own sheet, or how does it know if it's a chart or a regular worksheet?
Oh, so how do you know if it is how does it know that these are not worksheets, they're charts? And the answer is, these are tabs that have nothing but a chart. It's not that this is a worksheet with a big chart on it. This is a chart sheet. That's how I can tell.
But if you have other stuff on it,
you can't add other stuff onto this. That sounds just like my phone. Is it my phone? Oh, it is. That's right. Hello, Jack. Tomorrow, actually, maybe tonight, taking the 18th century printing press to the Helen M. Knight Elementary School in Moab. And Jack has flown up from Phoenix to come and do that. He portrays a major in the British Army. Flip in a red coat, scares kids. What were we talking about before that? Oh, we were talking about the chart. Yeah. So it's totally possible that in your life you've used Excel and charts and never realized you could put a chart on a tab all by itself. So there's no worksheet here. There's no way for me to add anything but the chart.
You have a question?
Yeah, here, thanks.
Are there other things besides charts that can do this?
How I wish there were. So the question is there besides chart sheets and worksheets, is there some other kind of sheet? You know what I wish we had? I wish we had like just a text sheet. This is just a text file right here. That would be great. No, there's not. There's only those two. I can't tell you how many times I thought, it would be great if I could just have a text editor on a tab. Oh, that'd be wonderful. No go.
But you can embed a Word file, right? And you can work on it within Excel.
Oh yeah, you could put a Word file in there, or you could put, on a sheet, on a worksheet, you could put a text box that's really big and fills it up.
But it's not the same as, yeah.
I guess it probably hasn't been more than 5 or 6 times when I was programming in Excel and thought, oh, that would really be handy. It's just not. I've lived. I've gotten by in life without that. All right, so there's the name of the worksheet. Oh, okay. So that's one way to refer to a worksheet is by its ordinal position. How about the name of the last sheet? This is a little more troubling. First sheet 1 is always the first sheet. But what's the index number of the last sheet?
The last count. -1.
Okay, there's some language like Python where you just go, well, just put a -1 in there, and that means, those of us who know, it's the very last one. It doesn't. That'd be nice. It's 1995. No one thought of that yet. Would have been good. But I heard it over here.
The count number?
The count. Right? We just counted the worksheets here. There's 5 of them. So in this case, I got to get to 5. Watch this. Are you ready? Change that 1 to worksheets.count. That evaluates the 5 when there's 5 sheets. That's going to be the last worksheet. Yeah, -1 would be nice. Wait a minute. Sheet 1's the last sheet? Yeah, I moved it to the last position. To back it off to the 4th position. And now the last sheet will be sheet 5. Neil.
If you named the sheets differently, does that change the, I guess it would change the count. Never mind.
Yeah, that changes count. Yeah, the names are they're totally arbitrary. Okay. While we're talking about referring to sheets, let's kind of look over here. So over here in my Project Explorer, I'm looking at sheet 1. And it says sheet 1 twice. It says it here, sheet 1, and then in parentheses it says sheet 1. In case you missed it here, this really is called sheet 1. These are actually 2 different identifiers for the worksheet. Let's go ahead and change the name of sheet 1 here. I'm going to change this to P&L. P&L. That's short for profit and loss, like an income statement. Now I'm going to come back to my code, and like magic, inside the parentheses, it says P&L. But sheet 1 still says sheet 1. This name inside the parentheses is how you can refer to that sheet based on what the user has put here on the tab, or what you've put there on the tab. This says, you know what? Here's a name for this worksheet that the user can't change. You imagine you made some application here. It's doing great things in Excel, and the user changes the name of one of these sheets. The user goes, I don't want to see that as profit and loss. I want to see that as income statement. You type it in, income statement. You're referring to your sheet as profit and loss. Can you get to that sheet anymore? Poof. So you can't rely on the name being the same. You can't rely on the order being the same. They can insert a sheet, they can drag a sheet to another location. What are you going to do? Fortunately, you have the sheet's code name. it really is called the code name. Code name, I don't know. Code name my sheet. Code name PL. Here's how you change the code name. You select it here, and then in the properties. If your property window is not showing, choose View Properties. View Properties window. And then just change the name right here. I'll just call it PL. And now that's my code name for this worksheet. So I could print the name of the profit and loss sheet, name of the income statement, and now I can just refer to that as, oh, let's do it both ways. Worksheets, and then in parentheses, P and L, that's the, sorry, in parentheses and quotes. It's not case sensitive. This is referring to it by the tab name. So I can refer to it by a number. I can refer to it by an expression that evaluates to a number. I can refer to it by a string. Or I can refer to it by its code name. What's its code name?
Yeah.
In that case, I don't have to do anything in front of it. PL is the name of the object. That's the name of that object. PL. I'll call this one the code. Well, it's not really. It's going to show us the name. So it's just another way to refer to that particular sheet. I guess if I wanted to see the code name, I could ask for its code name. Now that gets to the code name. But it's just a reference to the object. I can get to any property I want. So all of these are dealing with collections. This one's not really dealing with a collection, but we're kind of talking about identifying sheets, and so it has its own name. Questions?
How did you get to renaming sheet 1 to PL?
To this part right here, I selected it here, and then in the properties window, the very first line is called name. Just change it there. All right. That's enough for dealing with sheets, chart sheets, and worksheets. Maybe something else I want to talk about. I'll come back to it. But we have other collections to deal with. So the workbooks collection. Oh, let's see how to add. We want to look at the add method. Before we go to workbooks, let's look at the add method. So I'll just do this. Worksheets. .add. If you are a collection, you almost surely have an add method. It's a way to get something else into the collection. And so now, when I run this, here, let me run this at the very beginning. What was my last count of worksheets? Count of worksheets is 5. Now, the very first thing I'm doing inside this is I'm running I'm calling the add method of the worksheets class. I should add a new worksheet. So we should see a different number of worksheets on the count. So now I've got 6 worksheets, and in fact, I should look right here. There's now a 6th worksheet. So you can add new worksheet through code just by saying, refer to the collection, .add. What if I want to change the name of that sheet that just got added? What if I want to change it to, if I want to put a space, I've got to think of stuff you already know how to do, so I'm not introducing too much more. I guess I'll just change to a new name. What if I wanted to change the name? How can I refer to the most recently added worksheet? Count is tempting. It is oh so tempting. Let's try count. Actually, we have sure. Name of the, here's the one that uses count, right? What's the name of the sheet? What's the name of the most recently added sheet? Sheet 6. But here's the name of the last worksheet using count. What does it print? It prints sheet 5. And so it's not the most recently added worksheet. What makes something all the way over here at count what makes something the last worksheet? It's all the way to the right. It's the rightmost tab. That's what makes it the last in the count. So using the collection and the count isn't going to do it. Other thoughts on how I might be able to rename that worksheet?
Can you use the active worksheet?
Whenever I add a worksheet, it becomes active. It's the one active worksheet in the workbook. And so I could just say active worksheet. Active worksheet.name equals, we've got to be careful here because now, as soon as we put a name in here, it's going to, if we run it twice, it's going to be a problem. Because I can't have two workbooks with the same name. Well, let's do this. Let's see. Can we just ask for the time? Oh, yeah. Let's just put it with the time. Let's name it based on the time. I think that's a valid worksheet. That'll prevent us from having errors. Active? Oh, it's not active worksheet. Sorry, it's active sheet. Oh, darn it. It doesn't like it. What does it not like? It must be the colon. Everything else in there is pretty long. All right. Let's call it budget. Now we'll have to be careful because now we should have added that, and that new sheet should be called budget. If I run it again, this is going to be a problem unless I delete that sheet. So let's just kind of wrestle with a little bit of the difficulty here. Okay, so let's start off by deleting that sheet. So out of the worksheets, oh, by the way, there's a shortcut here. If I don't, my sheets can't be named the same. I can't have a chart sheet with the same name as a worksheet. So they actually give us another collection just called sheets, which is the superset of chart sheets and worksheets. So I can just go to sheets, name budget, .delete. And that's, oh, you know what? It's going to prompt us for deleting that sheet. What did we have to do before? Application, .display alerts, equals false. So now we can run it multiple times because it's going to delete the sheet and then it's going to add it and name it. And so that will work. Until what happens? Until someone comes and deletes the sheet by hand. Because now when we run this code, what's going to happen here?
It's not going to find it.
Yeah, it's trying to refer to that sheet to delete it, and it doesn't exist. It's actually a little bit ironic because the very state that the statement is trying to bring to be is what causes the statement to fail. It's trying to make that sheet not exist. It already doesn't exist, so I guess we can't do it. We're done. So this is sad. We'll solve this problem later. We won't solve it today. So what I will do, little debugging thing though. Let me go ahead and run it. You'll see that it gives us an error, subscript out of range. It's saying it doesn't know what you mean by budget here. One of the neat things about VBA, I can just take that arrow and drag it to the next statement. Skip that statement and move on. You can go forwards or backwards with that. So while if you've got something that's not quite working right, you can kind of play with the code and adjust where it runs from and kind of tell it to keep going. Question?
So will that include then what's above it?
When I hit play again?
Well, when you move that down, will it just skip everything above it as well? No, I mean with the arrow.
Yeah, I know. I gotta get to that place. So I'm gonna run it here, and it says, "Oh, there's an error." I hit debug. We go right here. Okay, now what's your question?
My question is, when you move it down to worksheets.add,
Oh.
does it include the application display alerts?
Here's the question. All right, so it looks like an error was there. So if you move it down here, is it going to include this stuff up here? And the answer is, you haven't understood what's really happening. So what's happened here? Here's what didn't happen. The interpreter didn't look over the code and say, I'm not going to be able to run this line. The code tried to run that line. The interpreter it has already executed application display alerts equals false. This has been executed. It's trying to do this when it can't do it. So when I go here, it doesn't make any sense to say, is it still going to do this? Because it's already done that. That's done. It's going to pick up from wherever I've dragged that arrow. Question?
So it looks like the code name continues to count as you add and delete sheets. So if you were to run this a couple more times, your code name would be sheet 15.
Oh yeah, code name keeps going up.
Why is that? Why doesn't it reset when you delete the old code name sheet?
Oh, that's a really good question. The question is, what's going to happen? Good heavens, what if I add 1,000 sheets? Will I get to sheet 1,000? Yes. 10,000? Yes. Why does it do that? Someone else. Sorry. That's the chandler. She's the one that makes candles. Fifth graders love the candle. Dip in wax. I don't know why they do it that way. But as soon as you close Excel and open it up again, it'll start counting from the bottom again. And if it runs into one that it already has, it'll go back.
So you can't retrieve those previously code name sheets. They are gone.
If you close Excel, open it up again, they'll start filling in from the bottom. So yeah, it'll go into sheet 1 the next time it appears. Okay, question here.
Is there anything wrong with your naming that sheet just in worksheets.add.name?
Oh, that's going to melt someone's brain today. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. We won't do it straight away. We'll do it in just a minute. We're going to do one more step before that. This worksheets.add, I'll rerun this through. This worksheets.add does more than I've told you so far. It adds a worksheet, that is true. But it also, when it adds a worksheet, it creates a new object. That sheet didn't exist before. That sheet was not in memory. That object, it's a brand new baby object. I mean, it has aspirations in life. It's looking forward to life. It thinks that anything's possible. It's at a new location in memory. It wasn't there before. And so the add method says, you might want to know where this worksheet is in memory. You might want to have a reference to this worksheet so you can refer to it later in life or later in the procedure. And so not only does it create a worksheet, but it creates a worksheet, at some location in memory, and it notices that location. It notices where it is. And it sends that location back to where it was called from. Imagine that I'm going to run some code, question mark time. Time is a function. It's built into VBA. It runs some code. It goes and does something. But when it's done, it sends a value back to where it was called from. And so that's going to actually print the time. It had to go figure this out. It had to have a statement that asked the operating system what time it was on the system clock. The operating system gave that value back, and then this got displayed. The value then came back, and it was passed back to where it came from. Same idea here. The add method creates a worksheet, and it sends back the reference in memory to where it is, the address to where it is. And so I can capture that. We talked about this a couple of classes ago. I can dim S as an object. And then I could say set S equal to worksheets.add. And now I will capture the address of where this object is in this variable. The whole point is that after that, I could say s.name. I don't have to rely on it being the active sheet. I can just refer to it by its memory address, the reference to where that sheet is. I have this thing sent back the address. I caught that address right here. Without this part, it sends back the address and it just like leaks out of the program. The address like rolling around inside your computer. It sent it back, but it didn't do anything with it, and you've lost it. No way to retrieve it. But if you'll capture it here, then you can use that to refer to the sheet that was created later on. This should do exactly the same thing. We'll run it. It deletes the budget sheet. It puts it right back in. We'll put it with a capital U. If you don't believe me, I'll put it with a capital U. Now, I did it in the wrong place. Thank you. That's why it didn't work. It should work. And now it's got a capital U. We did delete it and we brought it back. And so this we could say that this thing right here evaluates to the worksheet that was created. And because of that, if the only thing I want to do is change the name, there's another little syntax that's a little bit weird. It's almost mind-melting. So if this melts your mind today, just remember you can always withdraw from the class with a W on your transcript until 3 weeks before the end of class. Worksheets.add adds a worksheet and then returns the address to where it was. It evaluates to the worksheet that was added. This is a reference to an object. So I can say .name equals budget. Oh, I can't have two budgets, so I'll do equals actual. And so this is object, method, that goes and does something and returns a reference to an object, so I can call a property of the object that this returned. I can do that all in one statement. Oh. I've now got a sheet called actual. That's kind of handy if all you have to do is one thing. I tend to not like this. It's more than my brain wants to deal with. And so I would prefer to see it this way. I'm going to comment this out. I would prefer to see it in 2 steps, set it equal to an object variable, and then use that object variable to change a property. But this is actually a fairly common syntax that you'll see in examples online. Questions?
Sorry,
Yes.
why did you say again that you don't like to use this?
The question is, why don't I like to use this? And the answer is, to me, it just looks unnatural. There's no good reason. It's a perfectly fine thing to do. But this is a method, and yeah, a method can return a reference to an object, so I can just refer to a property of that object. And the truth is, I don't have anything against it. I don't know why I'm uncomfortable. It really is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But what it means is I no longer have the reference to that object. If I decide I want to do something different else with that sheet, how would I have to refer to it? Yeah, by the name. I gave it a name. I refer to it back to the name that I gave it. So I'd have to say worksheets, then in parentheses, budget, and then go.
So when you set the variable s as an object, and then you set that reference in memory equal to s, is that the same as when you change the name of a sheet, and you can use that name of the code name of the sheet and reference it directly like that? Because you have s.name just like you did pl.name later.
Yeah, okay, good question. So is this the same thing that's happening here? S.name and pl.name. It looks pretty similar. Is it the same thing? And the answer is no. And so pl.name is, pl here, it is a variable name, it's a nickname for the location in memory where this object is. When we have a variable, it is the name of a location in memory. What is in the location in memory where this variable is? It's this object. This is a name for the location in memory where this object is. This is a variable as well. It's a name for a location in memory. What's there? Not this object. What's here in this variable is a memory address. What memory address is at the memory address that this variable is a nickname to? The memory address where this object is. And so PL points straight at the object. S points here, and what's in here? A reference to that object. It's like a 2-step to get there.
I see that. Yeah. PL is like the object itself pointing straight to it, and then S tells you how to get to that object.
S points to somewhere else in memory, and what's there? It's the address of where this is. Now, you don't have to worry about that level of detail, what's happening. You could just look at this and say, oh, look, that object, I captured the reference to that object right here, and that's how I refer to that object. Great. If you don't totally grasp the whole idea of that's sitting in memory and it's holding a reference to a location in memory, okay. That's all right. Okay, one more thing I want to do here with this particular example. Dim S as object, there's something else I could do here. I could dim S as worksheet. Object variable, it's a name for location in memory. What goes in that location in memory? Memory address. Worksheet, name for location in memory. What's in that memory? It's just what's in that location. What's in that location in memory? It's a memory address for a variable. This is exactly the same as object with two little modifications. One, when I declare this as a particular kind of object, this variable can now only hook up to a worksheet. If I try to hook this variable up to a cell or to a workbook, it's just going to say no. It's only this variable s can only hook up to a worksheet. And if I try to attach it to anything else, it'll fail. If I have it as an object, I can bind it on one moment. I can bind it to a worksheet, then I can bind it to a cell, then I can bind it to a chart, then I can bind it to a workbook. I can do whatever I want. But here, it can only bind onto a worksheet. So why would you ever do that to yourself? Here's why you do that. Because now that the editor knows that this is a worksheet, I can say s dot. And it goes, oh, this is a worksheet. I know what you can do with a worksheet. Here's your choice. When it's an object, you don't get that help. When it's a worksheet, declared as worksheet, you get that. So that can be it. This code will still run exactly the same. Whew. Object variables are among the most abstract and kind of difficult things to grasp that we do in a class. So if you're thinking, good heavens, this is the fourth day of class, and already I feel like I'm swimming, we're about as deep as we go. We'll do some other things that will make you feel like you're kind of holding on until you get comfortable, but it's not really deeper than this. Okay, question?
Really fast. In terms of setting s equal to worksheets.add, if you do worksheets.add later, it doesn't mess with that s or anything, right? That's
right. So if later on I have another worksheets.add, this s is still bound on to the worksheet that was created at the moment that this line got executed. S will still be attached to it until I do something to disconnect s from there. Question in the back.
Kind of related to that, if you do another s.name or something underneath that, is that going to add another worksheet, or is that just still referring to the same one?
S.name equals budget. Now S.name equals fidget. There is no budget sheet, only a fidget sheet. It was referring to that sheet. I changed the name to budget. I changed the name again of that sheet. I changed the name again on that sheet to fidget. So it's referring to that sheet, and I can change the property of that sheet as many times as I want. It's not going to increase the number of sheets. I want to increase the number of sheets. What do? Worksheets.add. Okay, that's worksheets, chart sheets, and worksheets. We've got another collection. Workbooks. Debug workbooks.count. Workbooks.add. Let me add a workbook, and then we'll count the workbooks. Execute this line, or this procedure. We've got 2 workbooks. Execute again. How many will we have? 3 workbooks. There they are. We've got 3 workbooks. Which one am I? I guess I'm workbook 2. Book 2. So it's kind of the same thing. Could I bind a variable onto it? Absolutely. Dim WB as a workbook. Workbooks.add set WB equal to workbooks.add. WB dot save as. I'll give it a name. My workbook. XLSX. Run this code now. So now we've got 4 workbooks out there. One of them is named mywb.xlsx. Book 2, book 3, book 4. So, and it's there. So, really similar to what we do with worksheets. Change the names. These now are actually, they appear in the collection in the order in which they were opened. So, my very last workbook is going to be the one that we just barely opened.
Do you have to use the set keyword for objects, or is that particular?
Why are we using set here? Good question. Let's come back to the sheets collection to answer that. The answer is yes. If you're binding an object variable onto an object, you use the keyword set. Why is the question? And let me explain to you why. What would happen if I just said, refer to a particular cell, let me come here like cell B, C2, I'll put in here a name. I'll refer to this range C2 on the active sheet. If I print name, if I print the value, it prints the value right there. Wonderful. I can print the address. It prints the address. What does it do if I don't tell it what to print?
It assumes.
Yeah, it's going to guess. It is not going to say, as many programs are going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. Be more specific, then I'll do it. It's got an attitude. VBA is very helpful. It's got an attitude too. It's a helpful attitude. Oh, my poor programmer didn't quite tell me what, but I'm going to guess he means value. And print the value. So because objects have this idea of a default property, it affects what we can do when we bind an object variable onto it. Instead of dimming S as a worksheet, let me dim it as variant. Now what happens, let me do this, I think with ranges, this would be better with ranges, so let me do this one. Sub range dim R as variant. R equals range C2. Debug print R. What will that print? Nephi is what is in C2. That prints Nephi. So far, so good. What if I want to say debug.print r.address? What will it do? No good. I don't know what you're talking about. You got to have an object. So what happens here with this syntax here is this says, oh, you didn't tell me what property. I assume that you mean value. It passes the value. R is a variant. It can be anything. What is R? It's a string. I can't say some string.address. It's got to be a range to be able to ask for the address. So it's because we know what you're talking about. And so, if I use the keyword set here, that now makes it clear. We are binding this variable onto the address of this object. So now, if I run this again and print R, still going to print Nephi, but now I can print r.address. And it will print the address because this is a reference to the object, not to the value of the object. Because we can use a variant type, which can be string or it can be object or anything else, and because objects have a default property, this is ambiguous. We don't know what it means unless we use the keyword set here, which says, ah, we really do mean the object, not the default property of it. Microsoft has repented of this design decision in the language. The current version of Visual Basic, VisualBasic.net, you don't say let, you don't say set, you don't have a default property. So if I said R equals range 2, it would just bind the object variable onto it, not in VB. See, here's a situation where they thought, this will make things easier for beginning programmers. It just adds a level of complexity about how it behaves one way versus how it behaves another. They really have repented and changed the language, the current language. Would they like to change VBA to behave that way too? They would. Why don't they? What's that?
People have to relearn.
It's not because they have to relearn. The developers we're okay with. We'll throw something new on the developers all the time. Not a problem. It's the existing code base. What happens to Microsoft Excel as soon as you say, all those workbooks you have, they don't work anymore? What happens? Google Drive, Google Sheets looks a lot more attractive. I got to rebuild this? Am I going to rebuild it in Excel? Maybe not. So Microsoft can't afford to give up backwards compatibility. They've learned. That's how Microsoft Word became the popular word processor. Who was the top of the dog before Word? Who was the top of the hill? WordPerfect. And what happened? Windows became popular. And when you had to learn WordPerfect for Windows, it was a brand new program to you. What you learned from WordPerfect for DOS, you got to keep 5% of it, and the rest of it was brand new. And all of a sudden you're thinking, I got to learn a new program. All this knowledge that I had from where I was no longer applies. Is WordPerfect where I want to be? And what was the answer? Questions? Yeah.
What's the difference between set and let?
The difference between set and let. If I change this to, it's interesting. I can change this to let, and this now will no longer work. But if I get rid of the address, then it works just fine. Let is used to bind a primitive variable type onto a value, like 5 or Nephi. Set is used to bind an object variable onto an object. So if I had a variable like x, I really could say let x equal 4. We got tired of typing let, and we called the people in Redmond, Washington, can you please make it so we don't have to type let? I said, okay, we can get by without the let. Like the defaults to let. But you see this turns into a sentence, right? Let x equal 4. Sounds like the voice of God. Let x equal 4. So that's the difference between set and let. Let is to bind a primitive variable, just a value, onto a value, to plug a value into a variable. Set binds an object variable onto an object. Set binds an object variable onto an object. So set, there's a variant, so what variant's going to be is how we treat it. We're treating it like an object here. We're going to bind R onto the object, which allows us to, it's a reference to the object now, so we can ask for the address. It has properties. Question?
So I'm guessing in doing that way, it's saying let, then accept, or VB is going to have to guess at what type that variable is.
So if I say let here instead, then
now it's going to be a variant, because you've already told it.
It is variant, but the question is, how does it evaluate this? And the answer is, with let, it goes, oh, this is not binding an object to a variable. This is just a reference to an object. Does it have a default property? Yes. What is it? Value. That's what it returns. Whoa, that's kind of deeper than I wanted to go today. So that means most certainly it's deeper than you wanted to go. Okay, let's get back up to worksheets. I want to do kind of an interesting example with workbooks. Interesting example with workbooks. So let's say that I wanted to treat all, I've got a bunch of workbooks open. In fact, I'm going to run a bunch more. We get like 10 of these things going.
Where did our workbook save that we just made? This workbook save as?
Where did it save it?
Yeah.
Wherever it would save it, if I just said File Save, and then hit Browse. That's where it's saved.
Okay.
I think. You can specify the full, yeah, here it is, my workbook, my WX lesson. You can specify the full path if you want. And if you don't, it'll just be the default path where. Okay, so I'm going to not save these. I'm just going to execute. I'm going to get a bunch more of these open. Because we are going to write a loop that will allow us to do something to all of these workbooks. And before I do that, though, what we're about to do is we're going to say, I want to close every workbook except the one I'm currently working on. Except the workbook that has this code. Close everything else. In fact, we're going to close them without saving them. And so let's go ahead and save this one. In case the code goes a little bit crazy, let's make sure we have this saved right now. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to call it Collections Winter 18. And make an XLSM. Okay. So let me make a new kind of collection, a new sub-procedure. Close other W. So what I'd like to do is I would like to see how I can iterate across all of my workbooks. I've got a collection. I know how many there are in the collection. We've seen a little bit with loops. Next time we get together, we're going to talk about loops in detail. But we've seen the do loops. So let's use kind of what we know to do that. Let me declare a variable. X as a byte. What's byte? 1 byte long integer, range 0 to 255. I'm going to start X out equal to the count of my workbooks. Workbooks.count. That's how many workbooks there are. Now I'll make a do loop. Do and loop. Put an until clause until X equals 0. 0. Until. Now inside this loop, I'm going to make X go lower by 1 each time. X equals, it used to be, minus 1. Ooh, I think this is the first time we've done this kind of a statement in the class. First time you see a statement like this, you look at it and you say, there is something fundamentally wrong with that statement. What's wrong with it?
It's not mathematically correct.
That's not mathematically correct. X does not equal X minus 1. What does it equal?
X.
X equals X. But this is not an assertion of equality. What is it? This is not an equation I'm writing here. What is it?
Setting a variable. It's
an assignment statement. Yeah, I am saying take this value on the right-hand side, figure out what that means, and put it in the left-hand side. So I'm going to put it in a variable. What's going to go into this variable? Let's say X is 10 right now. What's going to go in this variable? It's 10 minus 1. That's 9. I'm going to put that over here, and X is now going to be 9. It looks a little bit strange. You'll be a little uncomfortable with it for about 2 minutes, and then you'll go, okay, I get it. And for the rest of your programming life, that will seem quite normal. So now, let me just do this. Debug.print worksheets, the whole collection, number X. If I've got 10 of them, the first time through, X is going to be 10. This is going to print worksheet number 10. It should be the most recently opened workbook. And I'm going to print the name. I will go ahead and print X here as well, just in case I want to know what my X value is. Workbooks. Thank you very much. That might have actually executed with the worksheets there. I'm pulling the name here off the workbooks. As long as I have at least as many worksheets as workbooks, that still would have executed. Just would have shown worksheet names. So I've got number 9 is book 10, and so forth. I've got something called my WBXLSX in here, down to the one that I'm currently on. So this one's always going to have the one I'm currently working on as the very last one. But if I had opened some other workbooks first, and then opened to this one, and then opened some more, it would be somewhere in the middle. Might have been a little more interesting if I had that situation. Okay. So now, instead of just printing the name, I want to close the workbook. All right? Well, workbook sub X dot close. Now, that's going to prompt me if I want to save the changes. Unless I tell it, there's a save changes parameter, unless I tell it, false. Don't save the changes. If I ran this now, it would close my existing workbook. All the changes I made to the code since I last saved it, gone. Would it prompt me? No. Gone. Can I recover it? Gone. It's gone. Believe me. I've looked. Like, why didn't I? I've been working for hours. Why didn't I save before I ran that line of code? It's a good lesson to learn. Ouch. Okay. But I don't want to do it if it's this workbook. And actually, watch this. Active workbook dot name. That's the active workbook right now, the one I'm working on. Question. What if I had what if that one was active when I came to my code? I ran that line. Now that's the active one. The active workbook is not the one the code is in. The active workbook is whichever one is most recently the active application. And so there's one besides active workbook. There's one called, have we done it yet? This workbook. This workbook says I don't care which one's active. There's some code executing right now. What workbook is it in? And what workbook is it in? This workbook. It's in this workbook. So I'm going to come down here. we haven't, I'm kind of leading you on here a little bit because we haven't seen the if statement yet. If this workbook dot name is equal to workbook sub x dot name, then if statement says whatever's between the if and the then, it's got to evaluate the true or false. If it's true, we execute what's before the end if. Otherwise, we skip until the end if. So now, out of all the workbooks, which one is this going to close? It's going to close this workbook. I don't want to do that. I want to do everything besides this workbook. So instead of saying if they're equal to each other, I'm going to say if they are not equal to each other. And that's not equal to. Less than, greater than. Less than or greater than. That's right. It's not equal. If it's equal, if it's not equal, it's got to be less than or greater than. That's how you say not equal. So now I've got 9 workbooks open. I run this code. And I should have only one. Fortunately, it's this workbook. Most of those other 9, or those other 8, never got saved. They're brand new workbooks. I closed them without saving. Pity. We're born, have such high hopes in life, and then destroyed. Never even saved. Questions on working with workbooks?
If you had, when you had done workbooks.close false, if you had done nothing, does it assume true?
Oh, yeah. The question is, what's the default? I think the default is true. And so it would, I think it would prompt you. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. And we only have a couple minutes for class today, so I'm not going to explore right now. Give it a shot, see what happens. Report back to us. Okay, there's one more kind of collection I want to take a look at. Let's suppose I'm here on my active sheet, and I'm going to come here and insert shapes. Insert a shape, a rectangle, great shape. Right. I'm just copying and pasting that. So again, here I've got now a bunch of shapes that are sitting here on this workbook. They are already in a collection. So, shapes. In fact, let's just do this. Dim x as a byte. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to iterate across all of these in the collection. X equals active sheet dot shapes dot count. Do and loop. Do until x equals 0. Inside the loop, x equals one less than it used to be. Do until. What are we going to do here? Let's just change a property of the shape. Okay, so we're going to say active sheet.shape sub x. Get to the element in the collection. And I'm going to change the text that's in that shape. Right now there's no text in it. But to get to that text, text frame dot characters. I have no idea what I just did. Dot text equals, and we're just going to put the name of that shape into the text so we can see the name. H-A-R-A-C-T-E-R-S. Dot name. I'm not quite sure I have the whole syntax here right. It might give me an error, so we'll track it down. Similar to what we had for our workbooks, it's just going to a loop that's going to go across all the elements of the set of the collection. And so we're going to change a property of the shape. What's the property? Well, it's in another property called text frame, there's a property called characters, there's a property called text. What are we going to put? We're going to put the name of the shape in there, so we'll see what these shapes are named. It looks like it worked. And so it's actually written the text on here. The names for these newly created rectangles, it's not all that inventive. Rectangle 1, rectangle 2, rectangle 3. That was the name of the shape. I could refer to these shapes by that name the same way I can refer to an element in the collection by its, a sheet by its name or a workbook by its name. It has a name as well. We could change the name and then refer to it that way as well. The only thing we didn't get to is creating our own collections. Let me do that so quickly so we can have it on the video. MC as a collection. It is just an object. What kind of object variable is this allowed to bind onto? To collections. I'm going to set C equal to a new collection. It's the first time we've done this, but we have to tell it to make a collection. So far, every other object we've bound onto, an existing sheet, or an existing range, or an existing workbook, we have to tell it to make a new one. But now that's my own collection. I can add elements into it. C.add, and then let me go ahead and add one of these rectangles. I'm just going to add shapes number 3 into it. That's going to add, it's just going to say, oh, we've got an existing shape. We're going to put it into this collection. Debug.print C sub1 dot name. That should print rectangle 3. And we could put multiple ones in here. We can iterate across it and so forth. Let me go ahead and run that. And so we have put rectangle 3 into that collection. Is it okay for that rectangle to be in 2 different collections at the same time? Yeah, because all that's happening, that rectangle is sitting somewhere in memory. And I've taken its address and put it in one collection, and its address is sitting in another collection. That's okay. That's what we've got. All right, folks, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.